Life in ancient Athens was loud, busy, and surprisingly familiar, and also extremely different from anything we know today. When people think of ancient Greece, they usually imagine marble statues, philosophers in white robes, and giant temples. But real Athenian life was full of noise, arguments, business, politics, family drama, and constant competition for respect. Let's walk through what an average day might actually feel like in Athens around 400 BC, during its golden age. You wake up early because most people did. There's no alarm clock, just sunlight and street noise. Your house is small, made of mud brick, with very few windows. Most homes are built around a central courtyard where your family cooks, works, and talks. Furniture is simple. Beds are wooden frames, with rope and thin mattresses. There's no privacy like we have today. Several people often share rooms, and everything you do is basically in front of your family. Breakfast is light, usually bread dipped in wine or olive oil, maybe some fruit or cheese. Meat is rare unless there's a festival or a sacrifice to the gods. If you're a man and a citizen, your day probably involves work, politics, or both. You might be a farmer, potter, blacksmith, merchant, or ship worker. Athens is a trade city, so the port of Piraeus is packed with ships from all over the Mediterranean, bringing grain, wine, metals, and slaves. Markets are everywhere. The agora, which is the city's main marketplace, is loud and chaotic. People are shouting prices, debating politics, gossiping, and arguing non-stop. Philosophers like Socrates walk around asking annoying questions that make people question their entire lives. And yes, people actually stop and listen. Athens is famous for democracy, but only for a small group. To be a citizen, you have to be male, free, and born to Athenian parents. Women, slaves, and foreigners cannot vote or participate in government. If you are a citizen, politics is part of your life. You might attend the assembly, where thousands of men gather to vote on laws, war, and taxes. There are no professional politicians. Regular people speak, argue, and try to convince the crowd. Public speaking is extremely important. If you can talk well, you can gain power and respect. If you mess up, the crowd will let you know immediately. Now let's talk about women, because their lives are very different. Most women stay inside the home and manage household duties. They cook, weave clothing, care for children, and manage slaves if the family has them. Women are expected to be quiet, modest, and loyal to their family. They rarely appear in public alone, and when they do, it's usually for religious festivals or funerals. Marriage is arranged, often when girls are still teenagers, sometimes even younger. Despite all this, women play a major role in religious life. Some of the most important festivals in Athens are run by women, and priestesses hold respected positions. Still, compared to men, women have very little freedom or power. Now, let's talk about slavery, because Athens depends heavily on it. Slaves do almost every kind of work. They cook, clean, farm, mine silver, teach children, and work in workshops. Some slaves are treated fairly, others are treated brutally, especially those working in dangerous mines. Slaves are not considered citizens or even fully human under the law. They can be punished or sold at any time. So while Athens talks a lot about freedom and democracy, that freedom only applies to a small part of the population. Education in Athens is mostly for boys. If your family can afford it, you go to school to learn reading, writing, music, and physical training. Gymnasiums are popular, where young men train naked, because yes, that was normal back then. Education isn't just about skills, it's about becoming a good citizen. Learning how to argue, speak, and think critically is highly valued. Wealthy families sometimes hire private tutors, while poorer boys may learn a trade instead of attending school. Entertainment in Athens is a big deal. Theaters can hold thousands of people, and plays are part of major religious festivals. People watch tragedies and comedies that talk about war, politics, love, and the gods. Some comedies even roast famous politicians and philosophers by name. Imagine going to a play where a dude in a mask is making fun of your mayor in front of the entire city. Sports are also important, especially wrestling, running, and throwing events. Athletic success brings serious fame. And then there are festivals. Athenians love festivals. There are days when work basically stops and everyone joins parades, sacrifices animals to the gods, eats together, drinks wine, and watches performances. Religion is part of everyday life. People believe the gods are constantly watching and interfering. If something bad happens, like a plague or military loss, people assume the gods are angry. Shrines and temples are everywhere, and people leave offerings, hoping for protection, love, or success. Now let's talk about food, because it's way simpler than today. Most meals are bread, olives, cheese, vegetables, and soup. Meat is rare and usually connected to sacrifices, where part of the animal is burned for the gods and the rest is eaten by people. Wine is almost always mixed with water. Drinking pure wine is considered barbaric and a great way to embarrass yourself at a party. Speaking of parties, rich men often attend symposia, which are drinking gatherings where people talk philosophy, politics, poetry, and sometimes hire entertainers. These gatherings can be fun, but also extremely competitive. Showing intelligence and confidence is just as important as not passing out drunk. Now let's talk about war, because Athens is almost always at war with someone. Young men are expected to serve as soldiers. Fighting is part of being a citizen. The city's power comes from its navy, and rowing ships is brutal, exhausting work. Wars affect everything: food supply, trade, taxes, and daily safety. Even during peaceful times, people know another war could start any moment. So life is not calm or stable. It's exciting, but also stressful. So what was life in Athens really like? It's crowded, loud, political, religious, competitive, and unequal. People argue constantly, but also celebrate together. They value intelligence, bravery, and reputation, but also tradition and the gods. Some people live comfortable lives full of education and debate. Others live in hard labor with no freedom at all. Athens creates democracy, philosophy, and theater, while also running on slavery and excluding most of its population from power. It's a city full of contradictions. But one thing is clear: ancient Athens is not just statues and ruins, it's real people, with real drama, ambitions, rivalries, and daily routines that shaped history forever. And in many ways, we're still arguing, voting, performing, and competing, just like they did over two. Life in ancient Athens was loud, busy, and surprisingly familiar, and also extremely different from anything we know today.